pretty terrible year last year, right? Everyone knows about it, right? Everyone knows about the trans violence that happened last year. We know about what happened up in Gillette. We know these things. You should know. But to help with this, and because we've had really appreciated the concerns about mental health that have happened this year, we're really going to focus today on looking at how the state of mental health for trans folks. We really appreciate all that concern, and we hope that you carry that as you leave these doors. There's a long history of this, and we wanted to explore. I've been asked to give this lecture about the history of trans exploitation and commodification by arts and culture institutions. And as we do that, we're going to look at the history of trans people that have been kind of abused and exploited by these institutions. So to assist me in this today, I've asked Mark to help with some of the parts of today's performance. So you can get ready. So we are grateful to hear the concern, about the community's mental health and safety, and we hope that this presentation provides a kind of a historical instances of trans and queer exploitation by arts and culture institutions. I really want to kind of preface this by talking about this critical concept that I hope everyone's somewhat familiar with, and that's about repressive tolerance, right? So this concept is that Stephen Brookfield says, hey, I'm going to have these students talk about and study Eurocentric learning theory for the semester, and I'm going to have these students study Afrocentric learning theory. And as they do that, 2 weeks go by, and this group over here studying Eurocentric learning theory, what they can't find, or they find all the resources. There's a whole library full of books about the history of it, multiple interpretations of that learning theory and how it plays into students of all ages. Well, this group over here, Afrocentric learning theory, they're still waiting for their books to arrive from the library 5 states away. They don't have very much written about it, and they're still trying to learn of what is Afrocentric learning theory, right? So trans history is the same exact way. There's only one dissertation that is written about trans folks in arts and culture industries, and we are only going to get to talk about 4 because that's what we were limited to be able to find for this, and it's a shame. So as we look at this, we think about Forrest Biss, who was, can you get ready, please? So if you think about Forrest Biss from 1911, is when they were born, and they were the first they were an abstract painter. They were presented alongside Jackson Pollock, was pretty significant, right? If you're as good as Jackson Pollock, you should be up there, right? That's how we award accolades in society, is by making sure that you're good enough and good as Jackson Pollock. So, he was a military man. But this person was discharged after being brutally beaten during the military for being gay, just for being gay. This is well before Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So he's discharged. His psychologist recommended that he continue to pursue art as a way to process his trauma. And one of the things is to make sure that we process that trauma. Was said, all right, let's just put some blocks on the page. And we look at how some of his paintings, later after using this as his place to grieve and to learn, he was then shown in New York again by Peggy Guggenheim, another person. I mean, that's a great accolade, right? If you're a trans person, you can make it into Peggy Guggenheim's gallery. You must be doing some pretty great work. So, but the thing is, as he did it, he was born. We went from 1911 to 1977. But it wasn't until 1977 or thereafter that a thesis he wrote about the idea of gender and the Jungian philosophy led, naturally to this non-binary set of genitals. His thesis about where that could head and how he wanted to unify the sexes within his own body. He perpetually asked for that to be displayed next to his work, and they denied it and continued to refuse his wish that be displayed against his, on his work until after he had passed away. So, as we were looking at, this within a queer studies lens, one of the things that we found was he was seen as just a gay man for most of queer research, just another gay man. But it wasn't until later in this last year that he was seen as a trans person and changed in the queer research, which is pretty interesting to think that that's something that would change. But again, I just hope that we're learning about this stuff and we're investing. It's a shame that we don't spend more time talking about this and protecting trans and queer folk. So Christine Jorgensen was the first trans woman in the U.S. media, and she was born in 1926. So there's kind of overlap here with 1977. And see, the thing about Christine Jorgensen is she's very passive, right? She was looked like a woman, smelled like a woman, walked like a woman. Everyone thought, oh my goodness, isn't this amazing, right? She's the first woman to go overseas and get, or first trans person to go overseas and get a vaginoplasty, and came back, and all the press was outside of the plane, just looking at her and said, oh my God, she went from a GI to a bombshell. GI to a bombshell. Shortly after World War II. The media just continued to make this huge fuss about her being, looking like a woman and being like a woman and being present in all major media. She built her career around this, and she just, at the same time, she just wanted to have a husband. She wanted to have this. She did have a husband, and she just wanted to be this picturesque housewife as she thought she could be. And she ended up passing away in 1989. And the thing about Christine is that she's the epitome of the exoticized other. Another phrase that you really should know, right? Because we need to learn phrases, we need to learn all this, because that's how we show that we are good and great allies and great advocates, is when we say we know the language and we know what to say. But she was this exoticized other. She was beautiful and she was in the media because she was a trans woman, not just a woman, and not just for what she did, but because she was a trans woman. We fast forward, and a similar person, Candy Darling, who was born in 1944. 1944. She was a darling of Andy Warhol. Everyone knows Andy Warhol, right? Pretty awesome if you're Andy Warhol's darling, right? That's something we should strive to be to. So the most famous of which the movies that she played in for Andy Warhol were Flesh from 1968 and Women in Revolt from 1971. She was one of Andy Warhol's favorites. He loved to take pictures of her. He loved to put her on magazines and to put her in these highly visible spaces. But you know what? He didn't pay her with a damn. Paid her less than $50 per shoot, even though Andy Warhol was rich, right? Made a lot of money. But she didn't make no money. But it was her body and her presence that was on all of those. So, as we think about this one, it's like, again, it's just that cisgender man, or that man just like making a ton of money off of the trans person's, body, the trans person's name and recognition. It wasn't them that made the presence, even though it was their body that made all of them. So Candy died in 1974, but the thing that was most frustrating about this is that, again, she died in part because of her inaccess to hormone therapy. How many know what hormone therapy is? Learn it, you should know it, right? If you're a good ally, you should know what these things are. So hormone therapy is still inaccessible to people today. Trans folk have to travel great distances. She had to go to Germany to get hers, and when she got it, she at the time could start to pay for it, but then she wasn't making enough money because Andy Warhol wasn't paying her any money, so then she couldn't pay him. And the German person was struggling to pay their bills and kept sending letters saying, hey, can you please pay me something? Can you pay me something? But she couldn't because Andy Warhol had all of her money. So then, the wonderful Laverne Cox. How many people know Laverne Cox? Orange is the New Black? If you haven't watched it, you should go watch it. That's what allies do, is go watch transgender films, right? Oh wait, the ones that have trans characters in them, not the ones that are written by, led by, or directed by.
Sure.
So we look at Rose, what Laverne did, she rose into prominence with her role in Orange is the New Black, but then she made all of this success. All of the success, getting Oscars, being on top of the Cosmopolitan and Time magazine, those are big accolades too, right? Being on Cosmopolitan and being on Time magazine, that shows your acceptance within the broader culture, right? Society has changed because we have trans women on Time magazine, right? But that's the problem. That's the thing that we face, is that no matter how we've done this progress that we've made, this person made progress out in national media, but did they make progress here? Oh no, right? We know what happened this last year, how many cases of hate and violence against trans folk, right? And nothing's changed. But see, she's also the first African American trans person to produce and star in her own TV show, Transform Me. But that didn't receive the same press as Orange is the New Black, right? That didn't see the same covers as like Time magazine. But it was more important to those that identify with it. So she was born in 1972. And is still alive today. Her career, is so successful. That one of the things that she's commonly lauded as on the set of the Time magazine's transgender tipping point, which I really want to talk about is this idea that we see a lot of people that say we've made a lot of progress, but then it's only in the news and in media and in things that are intangible to our local community. In fact, it's less safe for people that are trans or queer in our local community to just walk down the street and hold the hand of their loved one. But it's safer because we're on TV. But if we look at Laverne Cox's life, she's also abused, she's also taken advantage of, she's also not paid. There's been no progress in this. We're still exploiting trans and queer folk. So I just want to encourage you that if you do care about the mental health of queer and trans folk in Wyoming and Casper, that you step up and you say something about it and you start to engage, because that's what good allies should do, right? So with that, I'm done. Thanks. With that, I wanted to say thank you for allowing the opportunity to give this lecture about the history of trans violence and looking at how arts and culture mediums exploit their presence and just kind of perpetuate this forgiven time. We'll take a quick minute here and then we'll see all the wonderful installations. I want to thank the artists for all of their work that they've done here and making this installation possible, and I hope to see you shortly. Thank you, everyone.